This video is not sponsored by EA. Well, full disclosure, I am playing thanks to a game code they offered me for review purposes. When Wild Hearts was announced, I initially wrote it off, and this was probably for the same reasons that I imagine many others did. A game being attached to EA comes with a history of bad decisions and anti-consumer design. It wasn't long ago that EA was voted the worst company in America. Now, to their credit, EA has tried to make up for this somewhat over the years, but that doesn't mean they aren't still out there making bad choice after bad choice. It's just better than it used to be. One way they try to clean their image and mend the bridge between them and their consumers is with their EA Originals program, a system where EA funds smaller developers with minimal interference on their part. In their own words, it's a means of providing security to small developers. EA Originals is what brought us It Takes Two and Unravel, two games that were released to fairly positive responses. When I heard about how Wild Hearts would be under the EA Originals label and developed by Omega Force on top of that, I started to become more interested in the product overall, but I was still wary. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy their flagship title Dynasty Warriors somewhat, but it was never exactly a revolutionary experience to me. Besides, when was the last time we had a great Dynasty Warriors game? Omega Force seems to have moved on to other Musou experiences, Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors, that one Berserk Musou game. Some of these games are fun at best, but nothing that ever really set the gaming world on fire. My point is that Omega Force makes some decent games, but they tend to be playing catch up more than anything else. They created Tokiden, which fits within the Monster Hunter genre, and while a great experience, it pales in popularity and perhaps design to Monster Hunter, which continues to dominate the genre that it created. Then again, some of you were quick to point out that it was Phantasy Star Online that created the genre, so I'll concede that and say Monster Hunter simply popularized it. So while we get quality products from Omega Force, it's rarely if ever game-changing, and therefore I had few expectations going into Wild Hearts. But honestly, I think that's a good thing. Low expectations allow you to be impressed and surprised when something exceeds them. If you approach things with an open mind, you may find out that you get more enjoyment out of them than you had considered possible. Don't get me wrong, Wild Hearts has its share of problems that we'll go over today, but like I said in my previous two opinion pieces, which I still stand by, the game ended up surprising me in numerous ways. The locales, the monsters, the weapons, and the Karakuri tools all turned out to be more fun and engaging than I had imagined. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Additionally, consider this your minor spoiler warning for the storyline and for some monsters that may or may not have been revealed in the trailers. Let's be real though, it's a monster hunting game. The story is generally the last thing on our minds. Before we get into it, I want to frame this review a bit for you. I'm only covering the content that I have seen within the first two chapters of the game. That's all. While playing regularly in my free time, I'm still only just starting Chapter 3, which is where the game's equivalent to high-rank monsters are introduced. So I'll talk about some things in Chapter 3, but nothing incredibly crucial. Let's get right into the elephant in the room. Wild Hearts is known to have some severe technical issues at launch, which I do consider unacceptable. Like Monster Hunter World's PC release, which had periodic crashes and poor CPU and GPU optimization, Wild Hearts suffers from the same on both consoles and computers. To be fair though, this is all hearsay from me. When I played the game, I didn't experience any issues aside from the odd hiccup. I played the game using a 5900X and an RTX 3080 at 1440p at 144 FPS. It was only after I had my two opinion pieces created that I even found out about these issues from other players. I personally don't like to review the technical performance of a game in too much depth. I like to focus on the gameplay more than anything else. Even so, it'd be unfair of me to not at least bring this up, as it has been affecting so many people. I've seen many comments complaining about the performance on the Series X, PS5, and PC. At the same time, I have seen others say that their experience on those same platforms has been fine. I'm not an expert on this topic, so all I can do is bring it to your attention, and I might as well do so at the beginning, since these issues, alongside the $70 USD price tag, is already enough to make someone hesitate from picking up the product. It is inexcusable inexcusable to release games in this state, and we see it more and more as development goals become broader and more complicated, requiring hours of work, including crunch, which may still not meet whatever timeline EA requires of the development team. But to be clear, we don't know if Omega Force had to undergo crunch time during development. I only mention it as an example. Anyway, before you completely write off the game, do be aware, as of writing this review, there is a patch expected within the week that is said to remedy the CPU bottleneck issues that the game is currently experiencing. If you plan on playing Wild Hearts on console, or if you don't have a particularly beefy PC, you may want to hold off for both a sale and for the game to be patched to the kind of state that would have been acceptable for release. So with that filter out of the way, if you're still interested in purchasing the game or just learning more about it, let's go over the various features and gameplay elements I was introduced to during my playtime. Just like my Monster Hunter reviews of Rise and Sunbreak, I am once again able to say that the storyline of Wild Hearts is surface level and borderline unnecessary, at least as a whole. When you first start the game, I was pleasantly surprised with where the story was going and how it was being laid out. That's because unlike a typical Monster Hunter game, you don't start within the hub village that you'll be visiting regularly. Instead, you start in the field. You explore and are introduced to some of the basic combat mechanics of the game. Your character is a hunter, and you are looking for Kemono or Kemono to hunt for whatever reason you can conjure up in your head. At some point during your initial exploration, you'll find a unique Karakuri artifact and be introduced to a mysterious man who wears a transforming mask that changes based on his expression. The man will talk to you for some time before throwing you into the character creator, and it's a nice creation system. Nothing groundbreaking, but I will say that I enjoyed how the hair selection was broken up into either full styles or the ability to choose your bangs and other areas of your hair as separate decisions, allowing for more unique options. After creating your character, you go off to get demolished by the game's flagship, or at least what I consider is a flagship, the Deathstalker. After being defeated by the Deathstalker, you'll get to notice a Zora Magdaros knockoff appear before being left for dead, only for the mysterious man to show up once more and use the artifact you found earlier to infuse you with the ability to manipulate Karakuri, thus giving you access to the game's main gimmick, the ability to use Karakuri tools in battle. Now we'll discuss all of those mechanics in a moment, but the rest of the storyline continues to have you explore the first major map area you arrive in, while teaching you various mechanics like camping and traversal. Once you save 2 villagers in the field that make up some of the main characters within the story, you finally reach the village of Minato. From there, the storyline focuses on helping the village return to its former glory, unlocking the ability for Karakuri to work within the village, and saving Minato from the giant mountain bear I mentioned previously. Just like a Monster Hunter game, the story boils down to the same basic structure. A big threat gets introduced, you defeat that threat, multiple other threats are introduced immediately afterward that you must deal with, and so on. As of reaching Chapter 3, I've gone from having to deal with Zora Magdaros 2.0 to the game's flagship, and now a giant bird that seems to have the ability to feed off of and manipulate Karakuri. Honestly, I don't care much about the story, even to the point I find myself skipping the dialogue whenever possible so I can just progress and continue on with the gameplay. If the story's your thing, it's there, but it's nothing revolutionary. Now, Minato as a town is impressive to say the least. It's the scale of Astera, if not bigger, while allowing full maneuverability within it. This means you can place and use Karakuri anywhere within the town, which in turn helps facilitate faster travel. If you want, you can also use the fast travel mechanic that is built into the town, allowing you to travel to key points from your map. The town consists of a blacksmith, a child that can create ornaments to further customize your gear, a shop for selling rare materials, and much more. Everything you need within the town is easy to reach and within your grasp, particularly so if you set up the means of reaching everything yourself, which feels liberating in a way that is its own reward. I even set up these flying vines and witnessed villagers making use of them, which I thought was a fantastic touch to make the village seem more alive. The town is also upgradable. At some point through the storyline, you unlock the ability to build structures within the village by paying gold and waiting over real time. At least I assume it's real time. You don't see a timer, but the game tells you that you should go out and hunt until the work is complete. Now, I'd love to tell you what these upgrades do, but I still don't fully understand it. It mentions something about increasing the amount of ingredients you can hold at a given time, but I haven't really seen a difference. Looking back on this, I think certain upgrades allow for a single item slot to hold more in total, and then you unlock more item slots in total overall. This is actually one of the issues I had with the game. Because it throws so much at you so often, I often found myself confused on how to complete complete certain tasks or use certain abilities. Take the Hunter's Arm ability as an example. They explain this ability to latch onto monsters and pull celestial thread out of them once during the beginning areas of the game. I unfortunately forgot about it, so when certain tasks asked me to use the Hunter Arm, I had no idea what they were talking about. To the game's credit, you can find all previous tutorials in a menu, but for some reason I couldn't find anything on this Hunter's Arm mechanic, and I eventually had to ask other players what it was. There may be an explanation somewhere in there, but I couldn't find it. Some things in the game are fairly obtuse and get waved off with a brief explanation, meaning you have to dig around to learn about this in Wild Heart's somewhat cluttered menu system full of main menus and sub-menus. Back to Minato, another area that unlocks near the end of Chapter 1 is the bathhouse, which is used to permanently increase your health. It's similar to Monster Hunter Portable 3rd in that you can bathe in it if you choose to, but it doesn't actually do anything for your character after the first time. It's more for the role-playing experience, I guess. You can upgrade the bathhouse with specific materials over time, and each time you do, you can get another permanent health increase, but fully bathing within is not required. Overall, I was very impressed with Minato, not due to its scale or the people within, but because of the fact that I could place Karakuri around and set up my own desire paths. However, what's most impressive about Minato is that outside of storyline purposes, you rarely need to return to the hub town because all quests and the majority of town features are accessible from the various islands you explore and hunt Kemono within. Still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Speaking of the maps, one of the main things I can say about them is that they are impressive. They blew me away with what was possible in terms of traversal. As I mentioned in my previous opinion pieces, all of your Karakuri tools that you place on the field stay there upon revisiting the area. If you place a flying vine for better traversal across the map, the same flying vine will be available to you if you enter another hunt. And these maps are both massive and detailed. The best comparison I can make is that they feel like the maps that are used in Monster Hunter World, but with the maneuverability and traversal options of Rise. It's a best of both worlds situation that really lends itself to the presentation. So far I have 4 separate islands unlocked, and each seems to fit its own theme, from plains and forests, to beaches and ruined towns, to large snow-covered landscapes. Everything you would expect to see in a hunting game is there for you, but with the scale of open world locales you might see in something like Ghosts of Tsushima, all fully explorable to the player while allowing you to get creative in how you plan on getting from point A to point B. For example, I was fighting the Deathstalker during a storyline quest. As you fight him, he makes his way up a large tower that you can climb up by using various vines the creature left around the area. Alternatively, you can exit the tower, place a flying vine, and quickly ascend the tower with no trouble at all. It's very gratifying. Each map is full of gatherable materials and endemic life for you to collect, but it's all done the same way. You run by it, press the left trigger, and instantly receive whatever is directly in front of you. These maps are designed for exploration, but they aren't designed for semi-survival simulation we saw in, say, previous old-school Monster Hunter games. But that doesn't mean there isn't any preparation to be had. One big plus I want to mention about the maps is that they change drastically when you reach high rank. The beach map can turn into an ice map as an example, and the change is very apparent visually. You'll be spending a lot of time on these maps as well. Rather than there being a quest board or a maiden, you instead always have access to the available hunts on your main map that you can view at any time. If you place a campfire, you can sit down and look at the hunts and even set up a multiplayer lobby, but it isn't necessary. You could be out on the field and choose to hunt something from the map at any time, setting up the timer and a few guaranteed rewards for doing a timed hunt rather than just running into the monster while on an expedition. One thing I'll knock the maps for is that they give you the means to scale everything, but didn't seem to consider what would happen if you actually did so. I can climb this mountain here and reach the very top, which is covered in trees, but you'll notice that I don't fall through. Instead, I'm just on some invisible wall because I don't believe the game thought you'd ever go up there, or if you did, they didn't want you to get stuck. It was off-putting to say the least. Now, I'm about to talk about preparation and the camping system, but I want to make something clear since I received a comment about it. Wild Hearts isn't Monster Hunter. We can compare two of them to see what is done right and what is done wrong, but criticisms I have for Monster Hunter aren't going to always carry over to Wild Hearts, because it's a different game. Let's use preparation as an example. I often criticize World and Rise for removing a level of preparation that existed within the old school games before them, but I don't do the same for Wild Hearts. Why is that? Because Wild Hearts isn't Monster Hunter. It doesn't have the same development history as Monster Hunter, and therefore I don't expect all of the same things from it. If I miss something from Monster Hunter and criticize World for not delivering it, it wouldn't make sense to apply that same thing to a brand new, fresh experience that is trying to make its own name for itself. These aren't the same series, they just exist within the same genre. And while Monster Hunter slowly strays from the methodical preparation aspect of the older games, Wild Hearts doesn't have the same problem because it doesn't have previous games to remove mechanics from. In terms of preparation in Wild Hearts, you have two major aspects: your camp and your food. And the camp is an expanded version of what was introduced in World. Similar to World, you can have multiple campsites that act as fast travel points. But where the games diverge is where Wild Hearts lets you customize these camping areas. As I mentioned, some areas are made for a camp to be placed in, but you can put a tent wherever you want and turn it into a fast travel point if you have the resources for it. And almost all of the mechanics you would expect to find in the hub village can be created and placed around the map in Wild Hearts. Place a forge down so you can upgrade and change equipment, place a tower down to help you find monsters around the map, place various drying racks and pickling jars for food prep. During your travels, you'll find plenty of ingredients that can be eaten by the player for small bonuses. Sometimes these ingredients even apply debuffs. However, you can build on and stack these buffs or even remove the debuffs through the game's preparation mechanic. At first, you'll be able to use drying racks to combine large swaths of ingredients into 3 condensed versions that have enhanced buffs. This happens over time, but usually one hunt is enough time for the ingredients to be fully dried. You can then eat these prepared or raw ingredients while outside of a combat zone to fill your fullness gauge from 0 to 100. Each time you eat an item, the buff can be stacked with others. So if you have a lot of food, you can mix and match or repeatedly eat the same thing to build up your defenses. Pickling even allows you to add spices that offer additional buffs on top of what you would normally get from drying food. Food prep, camping tents, portable forges, towers, everything I have mentioned falls under the Karakuri category. What I'm sure many of us saw as a gimmick mechanic on par with the Clutch Claw in World turned out to be a surprisingly deep inclusion that benefits the entirety of the game and even expands upon what is possible with your weapons. Karakuri are broken up into 2 categories. The Dragon Karakuri are all the exploration and camping items I explained previously, plus much more. These require a special elemental resource depending on the type of Karakuri you are creating. Towers require water element as an example. You increase the amount of these resources by finding and upgrading dragon pits across the map. Once you find them, you can upgrade them straight from your personal map no matter where you are currently, as long as you have the materials to do so. Your Karakuri aren't permanently removing those resources either. By destroying a structure, you get all of those resources back, so if you want to replace a camp somewhere or add another flying vine to a more optimal location, you can remove some existing ones first to do so. It's very enjoyable because this is what allows you to traverse the map so easily when combined with your basic Karakuri. Basic Karakuri are a bit different in that they require celestial thread to be created, a resource that you gain by quickly chopping down trees or destroying nearby rocks. You're expected to manage this resource the more you use your basic Karakuri in battle, and Karakuri are going to be used a lot in battle if you want to be optimal. You can create a crate to scale or block enemies, you can create springs to chase after enemies while also offering iframes, you can create torches that add fire damage to your attacks, and can even create these helicopter things that let you glide across the map, which are especially effective off of a cliff or a zip line. I hate to say this, but it's like Monster Hunter mixed with Breath of the Wild, almost an open world Monster Hunter experience, and I know some people have been asking for that, so here you go. This is the game you've been asking for, it's here. You even scale cliffs similarly to Breath of the Wild, although your stamina is so low that you need to utilize Karakuri to take some of the load off. Karakuri are a gimmick, but they are one of the defining factors of Wild Hearts, and in a good way at that. You don't feel like you are limited when not using Karakuri. I can go whole hunts without touching it, but when you do utilize it, you are improving your ability to hunt in dynamic ways. You can upgrade many of the Karakuri as well. By breaking monster parts and completing hunts, you will earn Kemono orbs that are an experience currency to be used on your Karakuri tree. The tree is huge and unlocks new Karakuri for you while also upgrading existing ones. Speaking of dynamic, I think one of the main criticisms I have seen for the weapons of the game is that they are too basic in their mechanical or functional design. I saw one commenter complain that the weapons have only 6 to 7 moves, which I don't know. I'm not counting, but that seems like a lot for each of the individual weapons available to you. It's also downplaying what the weapons can actually do, and that's because a lot of the weapons have experimental and obtuse mechanics you have to figure out before you unlock their full functionality. Let's use the Maul as an example. I originally thought the weapon was fairly basic. It had a 3-combo attack with the X button, a leaping attack with the Y button, and a spinning attack with right trigger. Turns out that you can actually tap the right trigger after a normal attack to extend the length of the hammer and raise its damage. You can do this multiple times, and if timed correctly, you'll output more damage than I realized was possible, while also having the ability to weave in your spinning finisher attack in between at any moment. On top of that, every weapon has an aerial attack because you can free jump at any point in this game. Compounding this, certain aerial attacks change based on your Karakuri. Jumping off a crate tower, another specific attack that can usually be chained into your main combo. Using the springboard, another new move as well. All of the weapons have more depth than you see on the surface level, and they are gratifying to learn and make use of. The Nodachi has a charge mechanic that is slower while moving and faster while standing still, but I recently found out that you can keep charging while attacking at the same time, something I didn't think was possible, and that opens up further options for how you'll handle a fight. All of the weapons are unique in their own ways, and while comparisons can be made to some of the Monster Hunter options, none of them feel like knockoffs, aside from maybe the bow, but even that has its own personality here. However, my biggest criticism for not only weapons, but the entirety of the game is balance. I love using the bladed Wagasa. It's the only weapon that can parry, and it forces you to fully understand the monster's moves to utilize it properly. It goes from having the worst damage in the game to incredibly high damage once you have maxed out its gauge. No matter how perfect I play using the Wagasa, it is completely and utterly outshined by the damage output of the hand cannon, a weapon that requires barely any maneuverability or monster knowledge. This weapon is so busted that I can just stand in place for the majority of the hunt, build up my special finisher, and then fire off an energy beam like I'm Goku in Dragon Ball Z. Hunts that take me 10 to 20 minutes with the Wagasa take under 5 with the hand cannon, and this really prevents me from wanting to play anything else outside of variety. If I want to progress in this game, of course I'm going to use the hand cannon because it's the most efficient, low risk, high reward, while the Wagasa feels like high risk, low reward in comparison. Balancing may be my biggest issue at the moment, but you have to also keep in mind that it comes from someone who isn't even near completing the game, nor learning the meta, if that's something you're interested in. I recommend using the weapons that interest you and learning how to utilize them, as well as how to unlock skills for them that will benefit your playstyle. This in turn may help bridge this gap in balance I have been experiencing. And yes, weapons have skills similar to armor in Monster Hunter. Each weapon upgrade along the giant tree you can view while upgrading has multiple empty skill slots that seem to increase as you make your way down to higher tiers. You can customize your weapons by working your way up and down the tree so that you reach a specific upgrade or element you want while carrying over the skills that would most benefit it. If you want a higher parry window for the Wagasa, you can get that very early on in the game, but if you want this parry skill on another weapon, you have to work your way back over to the other side of the tree. I talked about this more in my opinion pieces, but the weapon skills and freedom of the upgrade tree really lend themselves to not only making your weapons feel unique, but also giving you the ability to create an experience that best fits you. If you need materials, you can even backtrack on the upgrades all the way to the beginning of the tree, allowing you to get all of the materials back in the process at the cost of a minimal amount of gold. Armor is mostly what you would expect from Monster Hunter, with skills and all. However, there's no decoration slots, and you don't periodically upgrade or level up your armor while progressing. Instead, you are expected to continue creating new tiers of equipment for higher defense. A weird decision considering you may want a specific set of skills or bonuses, but they simply do not offer the amount of defense required for later hunts in the game. Sometimes you have to make a choice between skills and defense, but I suppose you could offset this by eating meals that offer defensive bonuses. Additionally, there are one-time upgrades for certain pieces. You can trim armor into either the human or Kemono paths. Each one will affect where you land on your alignment chart, those being neutral human or true human, and the same on the Kemono sides. These alignments are there to dictate whether certain armor skills activate, as they require you to be on specific points of the alignment chart. Think of this like awakening skills in Monster Hunter, except much easier in my opinion. opinion, while not limiting other skill options because you took up decoration slots. These trims do also offer a small defense bonus, so it is recommended even if you don't need to unlock a skill. There's another big difference here. You aren't fiddling with decorations to fit in skills that you want on your armor. Instead, most of that customization is on your weapons and how you traverse the upgrade tree. Neither setup is a problem, and so it's more a breath of fresh air, something unique to look forward to. You aren't just playing a Monster Hunter knockoff here. Wild Hearts has its own ideas to offer, even if some are incredibly similar to what we are used to. And I just realized I didn't add this into the script, but they have the equivalent of talismans in this game as well. You can equip up to 5 of them, or equip up to the point limit. So I can have either 4 very expensive talismans or 5 inexpensive ones. The biggest gripes there are may come from the Kemono specifically. This wasn't a problem for me, but I have seen many people complain about the designs and how they lack something that Monster Hunter offers. Lack is in air quotes here because I don't really agree. I think when you fight these creatures, which are based on real animals for the most part, their design is evident. Animals tied to nature and animals that can control nature. Many of these creatures can change aspects of the map while traversing them, while others have natural habitats already created. For the people that complain about these designs, I'm not sure what you want. Not everything can be or should be Monster Hunter. We have fantastical dragons and biological alien wyverns in that game already. Wild Hearts tries something different here, and I think that pays off. I love the designs of the creatures, and I love how the game tries to create this narrative of respect for the creatures. Your player character will apologize after slaying an enemy. The village even holds a festival after you defeat a particularly large monster at the end of chapter 1. Speaking of that monster, I would say it is one of the only things I felt was the biggest ripoff from a hunt in World, but I don't want to get too far into it due to spoilers. All of the fights so far have felt fair. The telegraphs felt noticeable, and while I have seen some complain about the hitboxes, I haven't personally experienced any issues. The sense of scale in some fights is awe-inspiring, while the sense of danger in others is apparent. King Tusk is gigantic, and Deathstalker took me a while to get used to before it stopped kicking my ass. Each fight felt rewarding, until I started to cheese everything with the hand cannon, of course, because that weapon is insane. Small Kemono can be killed and carved for resources, but as a nice change of pace, you can sneak up on them as well, either to instantly kill them or to pet them. If you check your Monster Hunter encyclopedia, you may see that certain materials are only available through petting, while others may only be through slaying. Sometimes you get both materials through slaying, and it'll be a 50-50 on what you receive. Even smaller monsters, akin to endemic life from World, can be captured and gathered similar to other materials on the map. You can then store these creatures in cages or pens to gain further materials. If playing single player, you will be making use of your Tsukumo, who you find early on in the story. A Tsukumo is the equivalent to a Palico in Monster Hunter, but they are more basic and surprisingly overpowered than you may be used to. Tsukumos have 4 different states that they can fight in, and I believe they utilize all of them as you are battling. You can upgrade these states up to level 10 from what I have seen so far, and these offer various bonuses. The attack form makes your Tsukumo more powerful, defense form makes it more durable, and support form unlocks things like healing fountains it can place on the map. Whenever you are low on health or stunned, the Tsukumo can distract the monster for you, assuming it's still alive at the moment. It's honestly too busted and could probably be nerfed to not be as effective as it is, because sometimes getting attacked consistently and failing to defend yourself doesn't feel punishing in the slightest. To upgrade your Tsukumo, you find others like it around the maps. Each map seems to have about 50, and once you unlock a specific Karakuri upgrade, your tower can show you where to find them. They're the main collectible in the game and make your Tsukumo useful and more powerful. If the Tsukumo lacks anything, it's balance. Again, that seems to be the main problem with this game and really hampers my experience when it comes to trying new things. But additionally, the Tsukumo seem to be where the game lacks depth, at least in comparison to Palicos of Monster Hunter, which can be actively customized instead of just leveled up at a camp. I don't have too much to say on the multiplayer aspect of the game. Rather than 4-player co-op, you have 3-player co-op, and monster HP scales based on how many people are with you. If you and your friends are on the same key storyline quest together, the game should count a hunt you assist on as progression for everyone involved. You can drop into active hunts by selecting the hunt on your map, or you can find portals around the area that are hunters requesting assistance. I believe you don't know what you're getting into until you enter though. What's most interesting about multiplayer, and potentially game breaking, is that players that join your world can travel with you back to town and throughout the various maps. They can, like you, place Karakuri that costs your resources. This is fine in theory, since you can just destroy whatever they built and get those resources back. But what if these players find ways to place Karakuri in areas that you can't reach? I've already seen players breaking out of bounds and placing Karakuri out there. What's to stop a random player from griefing another player by filling an out of bounds area with so much Karakuri it prevents you from placing anything else? If you don't know how to get out there, I doubt you'd be able to remedy this. And as far as I know, there's no means of wiping all Karakuri from the map. So you could end up in a really awful situation, something I think Omega Force should consider looking into for future updates, and an ability that lets us destroy Karakuri from the map or something. Even if we look past the possible exploit, the feature would still be nice considering that there are times I don't have the resources to place a flying vine somewhere useful, but I don't want to run around the map getting rid of less useful ones to gain those resources back. It would be a slog and prevents me from continuing to build, as the time saved from setting up the one vine may be offset by potential backtracking. Just something to consider. Those little quality of life aspects are something that the developers really need to consider. While there are some nice things like crafting anywhere and everywhere, or seeing what monsters drop in the encyclopedia, other things can be more annoying. Say I want to know where to find an item I have gathered previously. The game will only tell you the location of that item if you are looking at it already in your inventory and reading the description. If you ran out of that item and don't remember where you found it, there's no way of knowing outside of the fact that they are somewhat color-coded based on the maps that you find them in. Overall, that's what Wild Hearts is. A unique and engaging experience, but rough around the edges. While I was streaming the game, I had a lot of people ask me if it was worth the $70 price tag. The best answer I could give to that, considering my copy was free, was that I would personally buy it if I had to. But you also have to consider that I am not experiencing the technical difficulties that appear to be plaguing other players. Wild Hearts seems like a great experience so far, and in terms of content, it feels like a finished product. Something I couldn't say about Rise as an example. Having only progressed through 2 chapters, I've felt like I've explored more and engaged with the world more than I have in a long time. There's plenty to do and it all feels complete so far. It's not just a Monster Hunter knockoff, but a new entry in the genre. And it brings enough uniqueness to the table that is worth experiencing even if you think you get everything you need out of a Monster Hunter title. Hopefully some of what we see in Wild Hearts will carry over and be built upon within future games in the genre. It's been a while since I played a hunting game casually in my own time, and Wild Hearts has managed to be a breath of fresh air in that regard. From a development standpoint, the game still needs a lot of work. Bugs need to be ironed out, performance needs to be fixed, and I wish they gave this game more time in the oven before releasing it. So that's all I can really convey to you when it comes to picking it up. Watch some gameplay videos on your preferred console or desktop and see if it runs in a state that you would consider acceptable. The gameplay is worth it. Wild Hearts is unique, and I can only see it being improved on in the future. But if you can't access this gameplay without being hampered by the many technical issues, you're better off waiting for everything to be fixed and maybe a sale. Thanks for watching, everyone.